Join me as we decorate opposite the Amma leopards to bring the Eurasian Lynx to the sanctuary. Really happy to bring you this episode. Let's jump on in, shall we? What is up, everybody? My name is Blob and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today, as said in the intro portion, we're going to be doing the Eurasian Lynx habitat. And without gassing this episode up too much, I think this might be my favourite habitat in the whole sanctuary thus far. But I apologise in advance if I sound a little bit nasally today. I do think I'm starting to get a little bit ill with something, but the idea is that I want to get this finished, or this halfway point done, by February. So I'm ploughing on through, and I really want to get this done because I had a cool vision in my mind and I wanted to do it while it was still fresh. But here is the plan of how this area is going to be laid out. Like I said in the last video when I did the update portion, I want this habitat to have 3 separate viewing windows, each room offering you a different experience on how you can see the Eurasian lynxes. And I had a cool idea for 2 of them, but the third one was still a little bit of an enigma to me. I didn't really know what to do with it. But this one over here on the right hand side, as you come up from the cheaters, is going to be the initial one. I wanted it to emulate a forest clearing. The one on the left hand side, this was the enigma. This was the one I sort of winged it as I went along. And then the one at the top in the middle here is the one that was supposed to emulate a sort of dense foresty area. But I'll talk a little bit more about that one later on in the video. And then in the top left here, you can see we've got the indoor area for the lynx as well. But that's not going to be anything too special. But let's jump in and look at the speed build portion of the video. This one is a little bit of a strange video. Obviously, normally you'll either see me start off with the terrain work or maybe some rock work or something like that and just establish the boundaries of the habitat. But given that the unique selling point of this whole habitat was supposed to be these 3 viewing windows, I really wanted to start off with those and get something that I liked from the get-go. So here I am just making the viewing galleries, but in the end, it turns out I made them a little bit too narrow, so I make this and I just have to extend it by 1 more panel. But really happy with how they turned out. They're quite small and condensed, and they make you feel not claustrophobic, but it really does help like enclose the space where you're viewing the lynxes, and it makes it feel a bit more personal to you more than anything else. Now, I must confess, we did quite a bit of the terrain work on stream a little while ago, but nothing too crazy. I do end up changing a little bit of the terrain here as well. Another reason that I did this was because when you're doing multiple viewing galleries, especially when they're opposite ends of the habitat, you really don't want to be able to see the guests on the other side of the habitat. When you're looking through the viewing glass of a habitat, really all you want to be seeing is the animal in the habitat and their enrichment items, and see them just enjoying their life. You don't want to see some fool or some kid pressing their nose against the glass on the other side of the habitat. So I tried to build the habitat in such a way that these 3 windows were decently spread apart, but you still couldn't see other guests as you were going around to each window. But these windows really did provide me with a different challenge that I haven't really encountered in this sanctuary thus far. And the windows are decently spread apart, but at the same time, they're also not. You can walk to each window within sort of a matter of seconds of one another. But again, each viewing point needed to feel different, because otherwise, what's the point of looking through the other 2 windows when you've already looked through the first? So it really did provide a unique challenge of being able to sort of make it feel different in 3 separate points, even though it was such a small enclosed space. And I really think I managed to hit the nail on the head with 2 of them. I was consulting with a few people. I was taking screenshots and pinging them across and just saying, does this feel like this? Or maybe wasn't even presenting the question of does it feel like this? Sometimes it was just be, what does this feel like to you? Like, what is the vibe you get from this screenshot looking at this? And people were sort of feeding back with the roughly the answer that I was hoping for. So it meant that I was on the right track with what I was trying to do here. But thank you so much to those people who were feeding back. You know who you are. It really helped me with being able to make these experiences feel different to one another, especially the forest one of the window in the top middle. That is the one that I really was sort of a bit on the fence about. I was happy with how it looked, but I knew there was something missing. But a few people were able to feed back and let me know with what I felt like was missing. But I'll get to that a little bit later on in the video. Speaking of feedback, thank you to everyone who voted on the poll for whether we wanted a halfway point tour, and it was close. No, really, just joking. But thank you so much to everyone who feedback on that poll. Really glad that there's so many of you that actually want to see that midway point tour, and it really does help spur me on to want to actually push on and get it done by that point. But again, try not to rush it. I don't want to rush it, because I think when I start rushing these things, that's when it starts making it look a little bit sloppy and mistakes start being made. But I really feel like the lynx habitat is a good point that fills in the corner opposite the amur leopard habitat. I did feel like when I was walking around there that it felt a little bit barren, but I think that's because obviously the space opposite it wasn't occupied by anything. But I'm really getting to a point now with this sanctuary where I'm walking around and both sides of the path are filled in and things are feeling a bit more enclosed. It's really starting to feel quite lived in, even though there's no guests walking around. But the sounds, the sights that you see, really does feel like it's all coming together into what I really want it to feel like as a feel. But in the background, I've extended the windows like I talked about, and I'm placing them in where I want them to be. I then obviously end up deleting the concrete walls that are where the air is the placeholder, and then I'm just editing the terrain so that the path is sort of quite flat. The last thing people want to be doing is standing on a hillside when they're trying to look at these animals. But yeah, they turned out exactly how I wanted them to. The headroom is quite nice. I originally thought they were a bit too tall, but when I went down into the Tegic cam, the old Tegic cam, and had a look around, it turns out they were actually the perfect height to be able to sort of just tuck yourself underneath and have a look. And I'm really happy with how they turned out. The canopy bit that sort of overhangs the front of it, there isn't much shaded viewing in this sanctuary, I've realised. So it is something I want to try and incorporate into a few more of the habitats. It might be even something I add to some of the old ones. There's a lot of work to do between now and that halfway point. Like I say, I want to try and get a lot of the decoration done. I've been putting some signposts in to help people get directed around to the different animals and stuff like that. I think I'm going to redo a lot of the signs as well. The Cub Club one's obviously staying. That one's one of my favourites. And the Cougar Creek one will probably stay. But I'm still trying to find that fit that I like for the other graphics. And then I'm just going around the edge here, just placing down a mesh fence. I said in the last video that I was a little bit unsure about the amount I'd used the retaining wall. So in this video, you'll see it used absolutely to the bare minimum. I use it for the two of the viewing windows, just to join the windows up to the rockwork on the sides, but it's not really something you can see because of the acute angle that it is compared to the window. Instead, I opted to just go with the old mesh because, like I say, even though the mesh isn't an ideal replacement, you can actually see through it, so you can see the foliage on the side, whereas the retaining walls that I was using is just a solid grey mass, and it doesn't really add much life to the habitat. So yeah, I'm just sort of going around doing the edge perimeter. I don't do the whole thing, I do this corner bit here. I knew what I wanted to do for it, and then I end up using a double wall. I use the black corrugated barrier piece around the outskirts as well, just to bridge the gap between the mesh fence and the pathway. I really want to incentivize people to use these viewing points, and they're not going to do it if they can just use the path and look to their right and see through this mesh fence. So this black corrugated iron fence is purely there to try and push the guests to the viewing points and actually use the habitat as intended. It's one thing getting the animals to use the habitat as intended, but getting the guests to use it as you want them to use it is a different story entirely. But going through here, you see me using quite a lot of temperate rocks. Don't regret doing this. I really love how they look. I think they fit the general area quite well. The pathway that leads up here from the cheetahs as well uses quite a lot of temperate rocks. I think it helps blend it in quite nicely. But a lot of this rock work is here mainly to prevent you to be able to see the other viewing galleries from other viewing galleries. You'll see me probably quite a few times during this speed build go down into the Tegic cam and have a look from the viewing galleries. This is for two reasons. Number one, can I see the other viewing galleries from a different viewing gallery? And number two, just trying to get a vibe of whether you can actually see how far back into habitat you can view, whether the lynx would have quite a lot of hiding space, because at the end of the day, you want to be able to see the lynx. You don't want it hiding at the back of the habitat the whole time. So, and then I just start doing a bit of terrain paint of where I want the trail to go through the foresty bit. And then I knew that I wanted the clearing as well. And then I started leveling out the clearing at the top as well for that. I'm going to start talking a little bit more about these viewing experiences. Like I say, two of them I already knew what I wanted. So the one that you'll see me working on in a moment will be the first one as you come up from the cheetahs. That was supposed to be the forest clearing or forest trail. So the idea being, and my thought process behind that was, I didn't want many trees close to the window. I wanted the trees to start quite far back, so that when the lynx comes up to the window and uses, I think it's the hanging scent feeder bag that I end up putting at that window, when they use that scent feeder bag and then they start walking away from the window, kind of looks like they're running back into the forest, and I don't know, it sort of creates that really Really nice effect. And then obviously buffalo grass. You'll see what I do with the buffalo grass when I get to that portion. The forest one, however, was a little bit more difficult. Trying to create something quite dense, but also create something that you can actually see the animal from, I do find quite difficult at times, but I think you can sell the illusion a lot of the time with different effects and stuff like that. The main effect for that being the viewing area itself is going to be situated in the central garden. So what is going to end up happening is that when I do the garden, this bit will probably feature quite a few trees, and those trees will bleed up to the viewing glass, and then there will be trees either side of this pass that you can see me decorating right here, and then there'll be trees at the back as well. And that shaded area, even though it's not ideal lighting conditions to be able to see the animal, I really think it gives the illusion of being underneath a forest canopy at the same time. And then the trees either side sort of frame the window quite nicely, and then you've got this big centerpiece yew tree at the back that really sort of brings the whole thing together, and I really do feel like it ends up looking how I wanted it to. And then there's quite a lot of the fallen leaf pieces as well. I don't really use them as much as I should do, but I think in this instance they really help with what I was trying to go for. But yes, as you can see, creosote bushes, they're back, and they're back with a vengeance. I use these absolutely everywhere, along with the yellow variant as well. They really, gosh, obviously there's a lot of talk about Plant Zoo DLC again at the moment, and gosh, if they release another plant as good as the creosote bush, then I don't really care what they do with the rest of the game. I'll be happy as a pig in pig muck. Basically, I'll be happy. And then the buffalo grass, just using it on the surface on the edges, and then when I get close to the middle where I want the lynx to actually traverse, they probably won't. They'll probably just goes right through the grass. I end up sinking it in a bit more, but I think it just helps with just having just solid grass everywhere, having this makeshift trail in there. But also with the makeshift trail, it means I can put some rocks in there, or use the terrain paint to put something like a lighter soil in where the green is going to be on the edges for the grass. It will just help blend the terrain paints together and give it different pops of color here and there. Obviously you've got green and grays everywhere, but even these little browns that you can scatter in here and there are just going to make a huge difference to the feel of the whole habitat. Here I'm just joining the windows up with the edges here with using these logs, remembering to make sure that everything was non-climbable. Last thing I need is the Eurasian Lynx getting out, and then this is me just checking the foliage palette to see what they like, and they've got quite a nice diverse amount of biomes and continents that they are able to use, including these dead birch trees, which really helped with sort of, again, just decorating the ground. You just don't want grass everywhere, you know, and being able to lay down some trees here and there really helped with the whole feel of the habitat. And then again, you see me going through, putting in ash trees, I put in black poplar trees, and then just constantly checking these viewing windows to make sure that it's got the view that I want. And then I'm putting in the enrichment items here. Like, yeah, it was a scent bag that I used in the end. A scent bag, and ended up putting one of the blood scent feeders as well. These really do help draw animals to where you want them to be in the habitat. I make the same mistake again here. I do this every time. I go and collect the rocks, the faux rock pile from somewhere, and then start placing it around, only to realize that it is the wrong one, and it is not the one that is made to emulate the temperate rocks. So I realize my mistake, and then I end up going through controls ending and getting rid of everything, and then collecting the correct color from the lion habitat and re-adding them in. I do leave a couple in just because it's a different scatter of color. Again, it's a very minute difference, you notice, but it just helps having different colors here and there for these little subtle details. And then I do a little bit of terrain painting in this area. I realise that the way I build my habitats might be a little bit unorthodox sometimes. I know some people will do these things as an entirety, so they'll go and do the foliage for the whole habitat, and then they'll go and do the terrain work for the whole habitat and whatnot. But I tend to work in smaller areas, so when I'm happy with an area, then I'll be able to take what I've used for that area. So you see me here just looking around, I end up taking that and then emulating it and applying it to other areas, and then I start working on the forest window at the back here. And that just means I start placing more buffalo grass, more trees. I bring the drin grass over here as well. This blue stem is something I've really taken a liking to. That little pop of purple. Again, I talk about pops and stuff like that, but these little things that take the eye really are nice in terms of breaking up the greens that I'm using here. But even the drin grass, something as small as that, you know, having these little white tips on the tips of the grass really help break up the monotony of the buffalo grass. But I really am trying to stick to sort of a rule of around 4 or 5 different foliage types in certain sections. So with the ground cover, I'm using things like the buffalo grass, the creosote bushes, drin grass, blue stem, and then I'll scatter some goldenrods in at the back of the habitat as well. They're sort of like my 5 main ground coverage types of foliage. And then for the trees, I end up using quite a few different types of trees. Actually, I don't normally use this many types of trees, but we've got some, I think these are Scots pines here, framing the whole window. And then we've got the birches as well, the stripped birches, dead birches at the back. They help as well. And then the yew tree at the back is like a centerpiece tree, as you will. I end up putting this one in to begin with, but then I sort of think to myself, I can make this feel more foresty by using a tree with a lower foliage line. Is that what you want to call it? How low the trees, like the foliage or the leaves on the tree actually hang. So yeah, you see this is a lot more lower down. And I think that helps sell that foresty feeling that I was going for. But again, I'm just looking at it and I'm thinking there's something not quite right about it. It doesn't quite feel as foresty as I want it to. The goldenrods here at the back just add nice pops of colour again. I've said that for like the 5th time. I should put a counter in the corner of this video. And then I end up putting some of the VFX in here as well for falling leaves, because I think to myself, is that what's missing? And I'm looking at this and I soon realised that what's missing is trees on the left and right to frame the whole image. And like I say, I end up taking a screenshot, sending it to someone, and I was like, mid sending it to someone, I realized what I'd done wrong or where I'd gone wrong. And I was like, yep, need trees on the left and right to frame the whole thing. The shade helps sell the look of the forest that I'm going for as well, even though it's such a small area to work with and get the feeling from. Me placing all these creosote bushes and stuff is just me dawdling for time. I'd sent a screenshot across and I was just waiting for a response from people to let me know what they thought about it and stuff like that. But obviously this needs doing, so might as well do it in the meantime. I know a lot of people that are like this when they're building. They'll jump around quite a lot. They'll do something and then just think, yeah, do you know what? I don't want to do that right now. And they go and start doing something else and then go back to it at a later time. But again, I was saying earlier about how the Amur leopard habitat area is feeling a bit more lived in and a bit more vibrant. I really am starting to get that vibe with it. I do want to do something against that corrugated iron, the dark corrugated iron, because it still feels a little bit bland, but obviously there's details still to be placed in, so that could all change over the next couple of weeks before that tour video. And here I am putting the fallen leaf pieces in. Again, I don't really use these as much as I probably should do. I don't know, I feel kind of a bit bitter about these at the end of the day. I kind of wish that they were flexi color so that they didn't have to be this, like, you could make a bit more variation in it. And here I get the idea and I'm just like, yep, I need trees framing it. So I moved the big tree over a little bit and then add smaller trees on these sides to frame the whole thing. And then, like I say, this is my only use of this retaining wall throughout the whole build. Is purely to join these windows up to the rock work on either side of a couple of the windows. I only use it on the forest window and the clearing window. The final window, which I haven't spoke about at all yet, that doesn't use any of this retaining wall. That purely uses just mesh fence and the corrugated iron fence barrier. And I've not talked about that last window. In fact, in this speed build, you will see me tackling the indoor area even before that last window. That's how much of an enigma it was to me. That's how indecisive I was about what I wanted to do there. You will see like a huge jump cut between where the indoor area gets placed down, but that's purely because I went back to a previous zoo with a lynx habitat and literally just copied the indoor area. There's nothing special about it, so don't worry, you haven't missed anything at all with regards to build or missed any tricks or anything like that. It's purely because the mesh that I use for the front of that I know is big enough to be able to fit the Eurasian Lynx in, but it's just a aquatic wood building that isn't too spectacular. Here I was toying with the idea of doing some puddles using the one-way glass, but ultimately I couldn't really get the terrain to do what I wanted it to get the puddle look. In fact, I spent so much time here trying to make these decal pieces match the colour of the dirt and couldn't do it that I just gave up and thought, no, I couldn't really be bothered with trying to get that look in the end. And it wouldn't really make sense for there to be these random puddles in the middle of the habitat anyway, when there's no puddles anywhere else in this sanctuary and there hasn't been any rain. But yes, this jump cut is going to be in around about sort of now. But yeah, this is just me placing it in. Again, nothing too spectacular. A lot of it is what you've already seen from me. I do make it a bit smaller because it's a bit too large at this point. Two entrances, just so that you're able to separate the links that at any point if you need to. There is only going to be one links in here for the time being, and we're going to go over that lad in a moment. But I'm just sort of readjusting things so that it's all back on the roof, where I've made the building a little bit smaller. But you're not really going to be able to see much of the rear of this building once I start decorating the central gardens anyway. It's going to be hiding a lot of this sort of stuff. But let's talk a little bit about the inhabitants of this habitat. It's going to be for the Eurasia Lynx. And for those that don't know, the Eurasia Lynx is a medium-sized wildcat. And it's actually Europe's third largest predator after brown bears and wolves. And unfortunately, like a lot of animals in the world at the moment, their numbers are threatened by things like habitat loss, fragmentation, poaching, and depletion of prey, also due to habitat loss and things like that. But yeah, they have an incredibly crazy range. They can be found in places as far west as Russia and places like that, Ukraine, but also can stretch down as far as Italy, Germany they're also in as well. Yeah, it's crazy how far they stretch across Europe. But I mentioned Germany as part of that list, but Germany was actually a country to reintroduce the lynx back into the wild there. And it's something that's actually been proposed here in the UK as well. Proposals were originally filed, but they were rejected because it didn't meet specifications that were needed. But from my understanding, this is that a new proposal has been either already put together or being put together, and they're actually planning to release 3 Eurasian lynxes not too far away from where I live. So that's kind of cool if I was able to see one in the wild at some point, even though the chances would be slim. But obviously you can imagine that this sort of thing is usually met with heavy opposition, and the main opposition being things like farmers saying that these animals pose threats to their livestock, which they obviously keep outdoors. But I know that there are things like schemes being made that would compensate farmers for the loss of any stock in the event of them obviously being killed by Eurasia Lynx. But I'm all for the idea of them coming back to the UK. I know beavers are something that have recently been reintroduced to the UK as well. So yeah, I'm not against the idea. I think it is really cool. It's good. It's good diversity for the ecosystem and such like thing. And yeah, someone from the UK that has very, I don't know, you'd call it boring livestock. We don't really have much cool animals in terms of wolves or anything like that. So having something like the Eurasian Lynx in the UK would be kind of cool, not gonna lie. One of the highlights of my day is when I leave for work in the mornings and I come back sometimes, there will be some squirrels dancing around on the trees, and I really get excited by that. So being able to see something like a Eurasian Lynx would probably be even cooler. But yeah, the individual in question that is going to be joining us in this habitat is going to be just a lone male for the time being. I might add a female at some point, purely because I wasn't sure how the traversable area was going to fare with this habitat, but it actually ended up working out quite well. So yeah, we have got one male in here, and his name is going to be Pippin. If you don't understand Pippin as a reference, in the UK there used to be a TV show that used to be on with and this is going to sound crazy, it used to be an old woman who used to own a dog, and she was interested in how things would be made, so she would just wander into factories and see how things were made with her dog. She would literally just take her dog with her. But that was never the craziest part. The craziest part is how she would get there. She used to keep a spotted aeroplane literally near her bungalow where she used to live, so she'd fly there, land at these factories, and then just start walking around, and they would show her how things are made, and the dog would usually run off and get into some sort of mischief as well. But the wonders of strange children's TV in the UK, I guess. But it also references the cat of someone who I watch on Twitch and also has videos over here on YouTube. Her name is Lils. She's amazing, and if there's 3 things in life that are certain, it's death, taxes, and that whenever you view something made by Lil, that you'll have a smile on your face. So highly encourage you to check that out as well, because Pippin is amazing and cute. So yeah, make sure you check out Lil. I'll put a link in the description. But this third window, as you can see, is finally getting tackled, and I end up just going with some sort of just plain rot work in the end. Not entirely convinced I like this one, but at the end of the day, it's different to the others. Like I say, that's all I really want. So this is sort of made to just be the top of the hill, rocky area, where we then obviously built the indoor area for the Lynx as well, and then just adding a few details with regards to wiring above the viewing points so that they can't just jump out. Those who don't know, Lynx can jump incredibly high, so this is something we obviously want to prevent them being able to do here with this hot wire or this wire. But thank you so much for watching this video. The end of it is coming up now, and it's purely going to be me putting in some speakers, and then I end up finishing a little gap with some black corrugated iron. But that is pretty much going to be the end of the video. This habitat is done. Between now and the end of February, I will be sort of decorating the pathing bits around it so that it blends in as well. But the next video is going to be me taking on the central gardens. It's going to be a huge undertaking, so please do not be surprised if it takes me over a week to be able to get that video out, because I have a plan in my head on how I want it to look and laid out. And yeah, getting that transferred from paper to game can sometimes be a difficult thing to achieve. But thanks so much for watching. I very much appreciate every single one of you, and I will catch you all in the next video. Peace out. Bye bye. Bye bye. Oh yeah, there's gonna be a panning shot at the end. Bye bye.